Here's my rule of thumb. Anything that I feel drawn to in terms of personal development and transformation for me is worth the investment. Because if I'm a coach, I better have a coach. I better have more than one coach, probably even a mentor. If I'm a coach, I should be going through very similar programs that I'm customizing for my clients. If I am there to be in service to their growth and development, I better be working on mine. So it's very much for me a walk the talk type of situation.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. I'm your host Rexhen, and today's guest is Susan Taylor, an award-winning mindset coach, dialogue specialist, and source-inspired leadership pioneer who has been helping leaders and entrepreneurs reignite their spirit and lead with clarity for over 30 years. As CEO of Generon International, Susan partners with executives and teams to cultivate human-centered cultures, strengthen collaboration, and unlock purpose-driven leadership. Through her unique integration of mindset coaching, bohemian dialogue, and source-inspired practices, she's guided leaders through deep cultural healing, organizational renewal, and personal transformation. And it's a pleasure for me to have her on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Susan.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming, Susan. It's a pleasure for us to have you on. So I wanted to ask you about your beginnings as a coach when it comes to Generon International and your coaching business. I wanted to understand a little bit more about what inspired you to start this, to become a coach and then start your own coaching business.
Thank you. So I actually started my own business when I was 28 years old. I was on maternity leave with my first daughter, and I had been in corporate up until that point. And upon the birth of my daughter, I realized that something was really missing in the corporate arena. The way I described it back then was the human condition. And so what I decided to do on maternity leave was to start my own business so that I could bring the human condition back into business. And the way I started that, because of my role and function at the time, I created probably the very first virtual assistant company in 1993 before VA was even mainstream. At the time, I was also a psychotherapist, so I had a therapy business on the side. And to make a very long story short, as I was creating this new business in a way that was nurturing, in a way that was human-centric, in a way that put people first, and also doing the psychotherapy as another element of that, I realized that I didn't want to have patients. I wanted to have students. So I took everything that I knew up until that moment and went ahead and got my coaching certs and decided to use that as a way to also fuel what I was trying to do with regard to bringing more of people-centric approaches into business. So Generon was my third client with that business. And to make a very long story short, over a period of about 10 or 12 years, I actually became a founder and a partner of the next version of Generon. So my client became my company. And I've been with them ever since through different phases and configurations. But basically, it's been about 30 years at this point with Generon.
Cool. And so right now, if we were to specify the ideal client profile that you work with, if they're listening, how would you describe them? Is there a certain industry or a certain demographic or psychographic, or maybe they have some common goals or other commonalities?
There's not a certain industry. We've been very non-industry specific over 3 decades. We originally started in the corporate domain with super major organizations. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of employees, trying to bring culture development and purpose-driven, values-based types of ideas into the culture and the leadership. It's really morphed since then, especially because of the pandemic. And now our focus is on smaller businesses, typically private equity, and we're really focused on being able to make a more penetrable impact. So employees, 1,000 or less, and a focus on what I would call next gen leadership, as opposed to what we were doing previously, which was more C-suite oriented. We work with individuals, teams, and systems to try to implement some of the ideas that we've developed as a way to, again, create that inner path and the inner development that's required actually to become a different kind of leader, what we call a source-inspired leader, which we believe is going to be necessary as we move into the future.
Cool. And when working with you, how would you describe these clients working with you? Is there a certain program of certain length, or is it one-on-one coaching, group coaching? How is it like? How is the engagement like?
It's all of the above. We are customized. So we really meet our clients where they are with regard to their needs. We don't have on-the-shelf type programs. We actually make them very unique to each client because we feel those clients are unique, and it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. So we do one-on-one coaching. We work with teams. We work with organizations with regard to their culture. We do a lot of online at this point as opposed to in person. So a lot of the things that we've done in the past have been reinvented to meet the capacity, if you will, to be able to do these things online. And I would say we also have, as part of that, a focus on practitioners, right? So we're not just working with clients B2B or even B2C. We're also working with practitioners, developing them in our source-inspired leadership concepts as a way to also scale so that it's not person dependent, but becomes an enterprise value.
And you mentioned also we're going a little bit more online now. Where do you find your clients, or where do the clients find you? Is there a certain marketing channel that you've seen working very well recently?
Well, it's interesting because we've been word of mouth for most of our history. I've had the privilege to work with a lot of thought leaders in the area of leadership development. And so because of those thought leaders, people gravitated to us because of those names in the business. It's only been very recent, I would say, even just post-pandemic, where we've really had to take a very different kind of view on how we market our business. We do a lot on LinkedIn and maybe one social media platform. But again, it's also very connected to past clients, referrals, expansions of those referrals because of the hundreds of thousands of people that we've worked with over, 30 years. So there's not one marketing platform. I would say for myself, I've just recently taken on a passion project that I'm really, really soulful about. And it's opportunity to do a lot of work around women's leadership. And so with that in particular, I'm building funnels. So I'm getting more, educated about how to tap into the different, not just social media opportunities, but creating different ways to reach external markets online, since the in-person thing is not as available to us as it used to be.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'll get to that too. When it comes to looking into the future for the next 1 to 3 years with your coaching business, do you have some specific business goals that you're working towards of? You did mention like working on funnels for women's leadership funnels, but is there something else that you're looking to the next 1 to 3 years?
I think for myself and also for the business, I'm really, really interested in being able to reach a more diverse group. I want people to have an opportunity to learn from what we've learned, regardless of their ability to pay a higher fee or to have to show up in person somewhere. I really am trying to find a way to make this more global, more accessible through communities of practice, through different platforms like school, so that it really is available at different levels for different people who have an interest in not only what we do, but becoming the best versions of themselves and who are truly inspired to maybe discover their highest potential, regardless of whether they're working in corporate, whether they're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a student, right? So I really want to make it accessible to as many people as possible to have the biggest ripple out effect. Whereas I think we are a little more limited because our target audience was very different even a decade ago.
So interesting. So what is the difference between a decade ago and now? And obviously in the future, you're trying to reach to a more broader audience. But from a decade ago until now, what is the main difference?
Main difference is in person, large to super major orgs, thousands of employees, limited maybe to senior management and C-suite levels without a way to penetrate fully from top down, bottom up, inside out, when I think of it from a perspective of scaling. I think what really changed that again was the pandemic when we couldn't be in person. I had just finished a really big project with Delta KLM Air France right before the shutdown, and that shifted everything. Now, luckily, I had had the foresight back in 2012 to actually start doing online training before Zoom even existed. I mean, we used Maestro at the time. So luckily, we were able to easily transfer the clients that we had. But what we noticed is that even a couple of years before the pandemic, things were really shifting for us. Smaller businesses, startups, and also CEOs who had served their tenure in the corporate arena who wanted their passion project. And so that all kind of came together right around 2019, 2020. And that's when we got more into the online small business, entrepreneur, solopreneur, startup kind of space.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really like diametrically different, right? From super major, hundreds of thousands of employers to solopreneur in less than 10 years.
Interesting. And so right now, where do you see a challenge with going more broader and reaching out to a more diverse group? And let's work on that first. And I wanted to touch a little bit more about on the women's leadership funnels and why is it specifically women on that end too. But first of all, I want to understand like the challenges. What is the bottleneck right now with reaching out to a broader audience?
I think from my perspective, it's getting into what I would call external markets. So even right now on LinkedIn or Insta or Threads, the people who really respond are my followers. So they're people who are already internal, if you will, to my network because they've chosen to follow me or they've chosen to connect in some way. Because we're not in person and because we're virtual as an organization itself, and a very small organization at that, I think one of the biggest challenges at the moment is how to tap into what I would call external new networks. So doing podcast interviews is one way, for example, right? Writing articles, being part of communities of practice. And yet it's all online. And I think in a lot of ways, there's pockets of oversaturation that we're trying to penetrate in ways that we might not understand yet. Because the landscape, even since November 5 here in the US, the landscape has shifted tremendously. And now we've got AI, right? So it's those elements I think that we're competing against, if you will, in an accelerated moment in time to try to like take these learning curves and adapt very quickly to pivot.
So basically, the bigger challenge is reaching out to that audience or being able to reach to that audience that is not yet familiar with you. So it's not the followers you currently have, but basically other people would still within your ideal client profile, but people who have not have any contact with either your content or have not communicated to you before, but basically do have the problems that you are solving in a way.
And just because I have 35 years experience, it doesn't really mean that much. I mean, if people are going to sign up and pay you for your programs, they need to like, know, and trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, if you're not known yet, the like and the trust, it takes time. It takes time to cultivate those relationships.
Yeah. So basically, the work seems to be on a very, very top of the funnel that is required. And then further down, let's say they have to know you first, then they have to like you, and then they have to trust you. The problem mainly, it seems to be like getting them to know you first.
I think so, because again, we've been word of mouth. I mean, we didn't even have a website till 2012, 2013, yeah. So, and now those are becoming obsolete. So yeah, I think, and I'm older, as you can tell, and my business partner is 90 years old and he still works, but in a very limited way. And so we got to learn a completely new landscape than what we grew up with in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on top of it.
So Susan, I wanted to also ask you, as you mentioned in the beginning, you're doing some work now on women's leadership, and you mentioned you're working on some funnels there. Why is the focus there? Could you elaborate more on that?
Absolutely. It's become more important to me than maybe I ever thought it would. I think because I just turned 60 this year, and with that milestone, I reflect on my own journey thus far, especially in business, and as I'm looking maybe to the future and the legacy. I feel like Generon really hasn't had a focus very much on women leadership. And if I look at my own journey, and how I have, again, had the privilege of learning from so many of the greats. And all of those greats were men. All of them were men. And so it's created amazing opportunity, but also it's highlighted challenges and what it means to be kind of that person that's a little bit more behind the curtain because of the world that we've created that is more masculine in energetics. And so that's not a judgment. It's not a man versus woman thing. It's just an opportunity for me to finally share and be able to work with women to help them reignite their spirit in ways that don't require the hustle, in ways that don't require saying yes when you mean no, in ways that don't require being behind the curtain in service to something that isn't yours. And so I'm using my own experience and my own journey there as a way to help others come back home to who they really are. And lastly, it links to the human-centric dynamic. I think we sell our soul, oftentimes in business, for the money or the role or the title, to feed the family oftentimes, right? And so I think there's a lot of high-achieving women out there who have created lives that look good on paper. They've met all the success markers by societal perceptions, but they're lonely. They're lamenting. They're craving something more. I want to help those women find their way back.
So rediscover their identity as well. And so how are you thinking strategically about this? You did mention funnels too.
Yeah, so how I'm thinking strategically about it is, again, creating a space where women at different levels can be met where they are, starting from something very small that's a free opportunity all the way through a series of different programs and processes to even a community and an advanced program and everything in between. So for me, it's more important about being able to connect with women who feel called to rediscover what lies beyond the hustle in a way that is going to be self-serving. And it's more than identity. In my own way of thinking about it, it's coming back to things that feel source or soul oriented, to things that they want to do because they feel that that's why they were put on this earth. So it's very, very emotional, spiritual in a way that helps women understand that we can follow our dreams too.
Beautiful.
So that's what it's about.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for
And so
asking.
this is also something that has been in the works already. You are already working on this.
Yes.
Interesting. And so you would say that kind of like when we mentioned kind of like the challenges earlier about reaching to people who I like to consider the cold audience, the audience has not experienced you yet. Is that a challenge also for these women or for the funnels that you're working on women leadership?
I say I'm actually getting more traction there
Mm-hmm.
than with some of the other things that my business partner and I do together. I don't know the answer as to why.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like there's more connection. I feel like there's more opportunities for trust that don't necessarily have to go through some of the other steps
Mm-hmm.
or some of the other programs.
And knowing that you're trying to scale so much and you have the woman leadership in one end and you have the diverse group in the other hand that you're also trying to help, is there a team that is helping you out? It seems like there's a lot of work there.
There's a lot of work there. I'm doing a lot of it on my own. We do have a very small staff. There's 2 of us.
Mm-hmm.
So in total, that makes 3. I've learned a lot around automating. I'm using different platforms to help me out that are kind of plug and play oriented. It's not fully automated yet. And
Mm-hmm.
it's been awesome to go through the learning experience. At some point, I will shift from kind of DIY to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe having a larger team or whatever it might take. I've talked with a lot of different companies about their views or their processes about, lead generation and those sorts of things. I've never really resonated with it because it that most of them in and of themselves are part of the
Mm-hmm.
hustle that I'm talking about. And I won't align with an organization that's about just making money. For me,
Mhm.
that's the icing on the cake. Got to have the
That's
other
extra.
pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Impact is first. Interesting. So thank you. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
So far within your coaching business is so many years, and maybe you'll have plenty of data on this. For my research, I'm looking into what are good investments that coaches have made, that in your case you've made, that you feel really good about. Either you learned a lot or got a good return from. And what are investments that you've made that you don't feel so good about, or you would have preferred to have avoided, if there's any of those as well over the years? You can think about recent ones. You don't have to go 30 years.
Yeah, you're smart to say that because I'm a lifelong learner, and so that could take more than the allotted time for a podcast. I think here's my rule of thumb. Anything that I feel drawn to in terms of personal development and transformation for me is worth the investment. Because if I'm a coach, I better have a coach. I better have more than one coach, probably even a mentor. If I'm a coach, I should be going through very similar programs that I'm customizing for my clients. If I am there to be in service to their growth and development, I better be working on mine. So it's very much for me a walk the talk type of situation. And I'd say some of the things that also have helped are some courses that maybe I didn't anticipate I would ever take earlier on, but have had to do, like some marketing courses, even learning how to post on certain social media platforms in ways that are going to be attracting and creating space for people to receive my message. So the messaging piece has been important to me. Some of the other programs I've taken, and again, I learned something from everything. So I've never had a bad experience or a negative experience with regard to anything I've signed up for. That's been my choice. I've made that investment and it's always paid off. However, there are some programs that are, I think, in my opinion, ones that I remember more and kind of have highlighted as transformational in my journey. The ones that aren't like that, I would say, are more automated. They're more focused on their philosophy. They're more focused on their program and how their program will help you do X, Y, or Z better than any other program versus more that kind of interactive connection piece that I think is so important. So long story short, programs that have less relationship, they're more automated, they're more self-taught, there's no human connection, are the ones that I probably wouldn't buy again, if that helps.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. So when thinking about scaling too, and this will be kind of like the final question too, is in your case, you're also trying to scale because you want to make a bigger impact, reach out to more people, not just a select few that you initially had at the beginning of it with your initial ideal client profile. So now for the coaches who are thinking of scaling their impact too, what advice would you give to these coaches? It would be like an advice you'd give to yourself too, so you don't have to think about who's receiving it. So what advice would you give to coaches who are looking to scale their impact?
So I learned this the hard way, and it links to something we said earlier. I think to have that biggest opportunity for impact, there needs to be a parallel path. One, obviously, is the path that you're using with your clients to continue being in service to them. The other path is teaching others what you do. I would say teaching others, especially younger generations, about what you do. My firm was going to be acquired at one point in time until, as we went through the process, it was realized that, but for my business partner and myself, we had not trained anyone. So there's no enterprise value because if something happens to me or my business partner, it's person dependent. And if the person goes away for whatever reason, that thing that's classified as value goes away. So parallel path, be thinking about how can you train others to do what you do. It's a benefit for them, especially if they're younger. It's a benefit for your business. I don't know if you want to be sold or not, but if you do, enterprise value is the ticket. So you have to be doing both at the same time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you so much for coming to our podcast today. For anyone who wants to connect with you or find you, they can go into LinkedIn, look up Susan Taylor. They'll be able to find your profile. They can also, I believe, go to generaroninternational.com, which is the website, right?
Yes.
And we'll link that to the description as well so people can find it easily. But yeah, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for coming to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.